You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Welcome to Living by Oak Values. I am Gary, the Superior Mailman, and I host this podcast with my friend Rob, and we will guide you through aligning your actions with your core beliefs. We are excited to share stories, insights, and the values that guide your lives. Whether you're a longtime listener or new here, welcome. Visit northmancoaching.com for your free toolbox and updates. Let's dive in. Happy listening.
Today we are going to be talking about loyalty. I don't know why ambition is written on the top of my page. But we have a guest here on the show, Todd Touchberry. He's from Sumter, and he is a restaurateur and a very big car enthusiast. And he made his name driving 1926 Model T across America in 12 days. Visited all the lower states and then turns around and opens up a Model T restaurant. Todd, welcome. How are you doing?
I appreciate y'all having me. Yeah, that pretty much sums up the last couple of years of my life for sure.
So tell us, why did you choose loyalty to talk about?
I just thought about, a few years ago, I've owned my own places in the past, and I've worked for other people, over the last few years. I had a floor cleaning business that was my own, and I just felt like I wasn't being loyal to myself. If you're not loyal to yourself, and I don't mean this on a emotional level with anything like that, but if you're just not toward your partner in life, if you're not loyal to yourself, you're not loyal to your partner, you're not loyal to your family, you're not loyal to your friends, and I just need to be loyal to myself again. Having your own business will definitely make you be loyal, and just everything that goes along with that. Felt like I had all of the core values lined up, and I was at a good point in my life, financially, but as well as mentally, and my mind was set right to be able to do this, which, just like you were talking about driving the Model T across country, had to be the same way. Had to have my mind totally set, and my goals set, and for everything to work together on that.
So Todd, with driving across country in a Model T and owning a restaurant, how do you stay motivated when working towards your goals?
Day to day, it's hard to sometimes. It's throughout a day. The first few weeks, whatever, of a new restaurant, everyone in town's coming. You got people from out of town coming, and you're going to be busy. But beyond that, when we started out, I knew February, this month we're in now, would be a slower month. It just traditionally is. And but when you have a wide open, you open up and you're wide open for 45 minutes or an hour, and then you have a lull, and then you have another group of people come in, 5, 6, 8 tables, wherever come in. Then you have a lull again. It's really, and I've told several people this over the last few weeks, it's really an emotional roller coaster ride throughout the day. I mean, that's the only way to put it. And but you've got to look toward the end of the day, getting toward the end of the day, getting toward the end of the week, getting toward the end of the month, and then just buckle down and just stay focused, and or you will lose track. I was speaking with my wife one day. She came by, and we hadn't had anyone in the restaurant for like an hour. That was the first time that it ever happened. And I was like, oh my God, do we need to shut down? Did everybody just say, yes, we've been there, we did that thing, we bought the T-shirt, and we're done, or what? And she basically just kind of popped me in the face, pay attention, you're better than this. And sometimes that's what it takes to get back on track.
I agree. It's like they say, behind every great man is a great woman, right?
Yes, most definitely. Most definitely. You know, the thing I was talking about, the emotional roller coaster, she's helped me out with that a lot. I'm 9.5 or so years older than her, but she has helped me mature. Even at 52 years old, she still helps me mature every day, you know, in that aspect.
Awesome.
What I'm hearing is that you're taking these small steps day by day, week by week, month by month. And I imagine you have learned a lot of lessons throughout the this time owning a restaurant. What is something that you wish you had known earlier that you
This
had to
time
learn,
around,
or something you had learned the hard way, but you wish you had learned earlier?
so you know, touching base on the emotional roller coaster throughout the day. When you have a day that is, I'm gonna just use round numbers and say 50% off for what you did this past Saturday. Well, knowing during good and well it's a Tuesday or Wednesday, those are things that I just, it's still hard to prepare for every week, you
Hmm.
know. And even though I've done this for, you know, well over 20 years, it's still an emotional roller coaster throughout the day. And I don't think I'll ever be totally prepared for that, or you know, it's something going into everywhere, any business. You know, you're gonna have better days, better weeks, better months. And I just don't think I'll ever still be totally prepared for that, because my wife fixed with me. I posted something on Facebook or a picture or something like that that said never satisfied, and she still picks at me about that. But you can't be satisfied if you want to have a goal. You know, even if you reach that goal, you can still not be satisfied and rest on your laurels, because if your goal is just to do this one time, one day, 1 hour, whatever the case may be, then you can rest on it. But if you have a lifelong goal, you know, of being somewhere, you know, whether it's open up a second location for a restaurant, or doing X amount of dollars to where you have to hire on another employee or two employees, whatever the case may be, add another day to the, you know, your business, you can't just rest on your laurels.
So when you say you're never satisfied, can you step back and look at the work you've done and be like, I'm okay with this?
Yeah,
I'm
I
going to keep
mean,
moving, but I'm okay.
yeah. This restaurant's been open since November, so we're what, 14, 15 weeks in, something like that. Am I satisfied? Yeah, 100%. But if I don't want to go in tomorrow and say, yeah, I'm satisfied and be lax or anything like that. The cross country trip, am I satisfied with it after 18 months of planning and doing it in 12 days? 1,000% yes, I'm satisfied with that. Do I want to do it faster eventually? Yes. You know, because right now I'm the second fastest person to ever do that in a Model T. One guy that actually did it faster than me, but I'm not going to sleep easy or give up on trying to find that rare whatever part for a Model T that's going to make me go faster, or a faster route. Those are things I won't be satisfied with until I'm able to at least try it. And if I fail with it, I can't say that I'll be happy about it. You know, that's just the way it goes.
So I'm not a car guy, but how do you get a Model T to go faster? I know it's basics parts there. Like what makes it go faster?
We had it as light as we possibly could. We had a different gear ratio in it. We have found it's a 3-to-1 ratio, which is basically what the speedsters had them in, you know, the race cars back in the day had in them. And we found a little bit bigger camshaft, just basic stuff, you know, just we didn't have the windshield up if we didn't have to. We did have the top up because it was so cold most of the time, even though we had to take the floorboard out a few times because it was so cold trying to get heat off the engine. But there's not a whole lot you can do to it. You can change wheel size, go from the wood wheels to the wire wheels, smaller diameter. The next step we're trying to do is do a Warford period correct overdrive transmission, and hopefully that'll get us into the 60 something mile an hour range. Most Model Ts, Robert would say you go 40, 45, you know, on a good day. We were able to hit 52.9 consistently,
Wow.
which is really moving on wood wheels. And my goal is to get into the deep 60s with that on those same wood wheels.
All right. So I have one dumb question, and Rob, you can edit it out if you
Okay.
have to.
Okay.
Can you put nitrous in a Model T?
No,
Okay.
no,
Fair
no.
enough. Just one.
You can run a Model T on just about anything that's flammable.
Okay.
I try to run non-ethanol gas in it, which I'm sure most Model T owners do, just because of the fact if they sit for a long period of time, the ethanol breaks down, but they run just as good. I say they run just as good on the ethanol blend. When we were going across country, and it was probably had a lot to do with the different elevations. And, gas is different in every state, depending on the elevation and stuff like that from the research I did. We ended up not running as good on ethanol blended gas as we did on non-ethanol gas, which it was hard to find in some areas.
I run on ethanol gas. I do.
I
But
don't
I
know what the
also
difference is.
I put a that additive in there,
Yeah.
the fuel injector additive.
I go with 89 unleaded. I don't know what that means. It's the cheap stuff.
Yeah.
I drive a Honda.
Now, I just use 87 in my daily driver pickup.
Yeah.
If I'm driving the Model T more, my touring car doesn't mind ethanol blended gas at all. But the truck that we use, the engine, transmission, and everything that we used for that cross country trip, it did run better on non-ethanol.
Okay.
But I mean,
Well, non-ethanol is more combustible though. It
Yeah.
has more paying per
Hmm.
whatever it's called per inch.
Yeah.
Todd, what is a
We're
what is a fear that you have recently faced, and how did you overcome it? And I feel like this is going to have something to do with the restaurant, because I know having my restaurant, I had a lot of fears.
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest fears we have, I don't want to say it's a fear because we're obviously prepared for it, is when we get what was DHEC, but it's now Department of Agriculture inspection. They can walk in at any point in time. They recently did. We got dinged on a couple of things, but that's fine. They came back for a reinspection, popped in 8 or 10 days later, and we got a 100-point score on it. But
Congrats.
that's one thing. I don't want to use the word fear because they're doing their job, and if we're doing ours, we're all good to go. But there's always something you're going to overlook, especially because they come in the middle of lunch rush. Another thing, again, touching back on the emotional roller coaster throughout the day, and having my wife just basically, slap my face, wake up, this is going to happen. You're going to have a lull here and there, and that's perfectly fine.
Where did you learn I'm going to go back to loyalty. Is like, how did you learn loyalty? Who taught you?
Everyone, all the elders in my family,
Mm.
whether it's my parents, grandparents on both sides. My great aunt and uncle actually raised my mom for the most part. My real grandfather he was, I don't know if we can use the word or not, but murdered back in the 50s. And my great aunt and uncle, and I don't think I could have been any closer to anyone possibly in this world than them. I called them Mert and Pap. And they came up through the Depression.
Mm.
So when you come up that way, and you have a spouse, World War II, and everything else like that. All my grandparents were veterans, or my grandfathers anyway were veterans. Just, I think being so close to that generation of people has just instilled in me those values that they had, and it's hard pressed to find that type of thing now.
I have to agree with you on the fact that loyalty definitely comes from the older generation. I
Yeah.
definitely have loyalty, and I think I got it. I know I got it from my parents and my grandparents, who were they were born the year of the Depression. So shortly after
Yeah.
they grew up in that time.
Yep. Yeah, I watched Pap. Again, technically he was my great uncle, but I watched them even when they were up in age or whatever, and had some money in the bank, so to speak. I watched him break open chicken legs and eat the bone marrow out of it. Because he was just not going to waste anything. Again, you could get back to loyal, to where like, hey, I'm gonna make sure we still have something tomorrow.
So, how are you teaching your kids this value?
Man, that's a tough one nowadays.
Because I don't think Gary knows that you did that whole trip on the Model T just for your daughter.
Yeah. So, my daughter, she's 23, previous marriage. She has a brain condition called hydrocephalus, and you wouldn't know it if you saw her. Robert's met her a few times. She's had 19 brain surgeries, and she has a shunt that drains the fluid. Like our cerebral spinal fluid is circulating on all of us right now. It's basically like a radiator hose collapsed, and it just put pressure on it and back pressure up onto her brain. So the back of her brain looks like Swiss cheese. So her brain surgeries have included at different various times heart, spine, and stomach. And she'd asked me years ago to do a fundraiser for the Hydrocephalus Association and host a car show. And I said, yeah, but I'll come up with something bigger one day. And I sold my 64 Ford Galaxy because I'd told myself all my life I was going to have something that was over 100 years old one day. I didn't know it was going to be a Model T Ford, but that was the most budget-friendly car that was over 100 years old. And started researching people then that had went across country back in the teens and, even earlier than that. And it took 66 days and all this stuff. And I just like, this might be the right quote unquote gimmick, to raise money for the Hydrocephalus Association. So we did a release video saying we were going to do it. And I really don't know where this number came out. I just pulled it out of thin air. So we're going to try to raise $10 per mile with your help. And I started thinking, I was like, man, that's $30,000 I just committed us to trying to raise. So we ended up raising, I think the donations were a little over 31,000 when it was said and done after expenses and everything.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Excellent. That is definitely something you should be proud of.
Yeah, I'm very proud of it. I'm extremely proud. I was proud that we got asked to put it in a museum down in Georgia for a while after the trip. And yeah, I'm real proud of it. Like I said, it took a lot of planning. After, to start with, after we announced it, I was like, we'll probably get to Alabama, Mississippi, and we'll just be out of parts. And we attempted it, and that's going to be good enough. But after I did a podcast with, or YouTube podcast type deal with the guy up in Canada, and I had people reach out to me from Australia, people in California got involved with it. I spoke in Las Vegas. I was like, man, this is, we better figure out a way to get to California. So every afternoon I was like, what can I do to make this trip any shorter? Which was, again, 18 months worth of planning and everything else. And it worked out.
Excellent. I remember when, I don't remember when you made the trip exactly, but I remember Rob telling me about it. And it was shortly after either you started or got back, you were in my Google feed. And I called Rob. I was like, Touchberry, that's the guy right? He's like, yeah. I'm like, he's in my Google feed for driving across country in a Model T.
Nice. Yeah, we got fortunate. We had a lot of people cover us, especially local people along the way, newspapers and radio and everything. And we had Hemmings Motor News cover us, and the Haggerty and all those guys covered us too. So it was pretty cool.
So going back to my question, how did you
Yes.
teach loyalty to your kids?
So again, every age group, every generation's different. I am definitely old school as much as I possibly can be in my values and everything. With Elizabeth, it was hard, because again, separated parents at a fairly young age, but her mom did a great job with her as well. She had a lot of the same values I had. We still both, and with my stepchildren now that are 12 and 16, and I know you've seen them on, especially Will. Will's with me a lot. It's I don't know that's something else I'll never be satisfied with, because I don't know. I feel like we're doing a good job raising them all, but at the same time, have we done enough? Do I need to strive that much harder? What can I say or do or act, that will set a good example for them? Whether it's just something I say, react to it. If they're in the restaurant and they see an upset customer, how do I react? That's going to instill a good value in them that one day they'll think back and say, hey, this is how my dad reacted. This is how I should react. So it's tough. It's a really tough job.
Thank you for sharing.
I agree that is thank you for sharing that. But it is I mean, even with my daughter, I try to teach her all the values all the values that I value. And it's difficult with kids these days.
Man, it is.
So that's awesome that you're working on teaching them the value of loyalty.
Well, it's good that you're thinking about it, because a lot of people, you'd be surprised that you go around and ask people what their values are, but they don't really say it, and then it's like they're not thinking about passing it on to the next generation either. So they're like, "Oh, yeah."
And I didn't understand this when I was 15 or 30, really. That my parents, grandparents, aunt and uncles, my great aunts and uncles, parents, cousins, even, how they acted or whatever, definitely influenced the way I am as a 52-year-old now.
So when did you realize, if you didn't realize at 15 that you had these values, when did you think you first realized that, wow, I got these values from my parents or my grandparents?
I'm sure I started picking up on in my 30s probably. And I was like, no, that's just the way I am, But I think every year, especially my late 40s, now in my early 50s, I've definitely realized how much of an influence they were on me.
So go ahead, Rob. Sorry.
Well, we're talking about what influence they had on you and what you've noticed. What is one habit that you says, hey, positively changed your life?
I mentioned this before about Pap. My great uncle, breaking that bone marrow or breaking that chicken leg open and eating bone marrow, or eating scrapple, which was hog brains and scrambled eggs, And I was like, man, these people are really dedicated to making sure they still have something tomorrow. They're not spending their money today, and that can lead into every avenue you want it to. They were dedicated to saving, to make sure they had something, like I said. Just little things like that. My mom and dad, when I was little, they sent me to private school, and you could tell in our daily lives or whatever that we really couldn't afford for me to go to private school. But, they found a way to do it. They dedicated, they cut back on this, cut back on that, make sure we always went on family vacations and everything else. But, and sometimes there were bigger vacations than other ones. But just like I said, they were dedicated for me and for my sister, which we don't really speak anymore. But just little instances like that, those were just huge in my life. That probably didn't answer the question as good as it should have, but
you did a great job. So
I have one last question. I don't know if Rob has more.
Last one.
And this is a good one, I think, because between driving across country, maintaining the Model T, running a restaurant, how do you celebrate your achievements?
By planning another goal.
That's good. I like that one. I would have never said that.
Again, I think that's what leads back to my wife, giving me a hard time about saying never satisfied. It is. I think that's. I've watched older race NASCAR drivers, older professional wrestlers and stuff like that really struggle with things once they can't do anything else, and that's a definite fear that I have.
Okay. So this has nothing to do with loyalty, but I like your bone marrow story, and I have a similar story. When I was in the restaurant business, we some buddies of mine, we had a pig roast, and when the pig roast was over, I took the head home with me and brought it to the restaurant, put it in the walk-in cooler, and the next day I broke it open and I took the brains out and scrambled them with eggs, and it was one of the best things I've ever eaten in my life.
Yeah. They I until recently I had the frying pan that my grandmother cooked out of, and you could almost see that it was a cast iron pan, and it was almost paper thin because they had that since they got married. That's what she cooked in pretty much every night. That's what I ate that scrapple out of. But we also ate tongue, and just about every organ you can imagine.
When Rob and I were in Mexico, we had what was that? We had the street taco, but it had like cow face. It was the
Yeah.
tongue, the cheek.
Yeah,
Cow
the cow.
tongue. I think
Yeah.
it was cow tongue.
It was a little mushy, but it was good.
Yeah, I can remember Mert again, taking that cow tongue and just this paring knife she had and just paring it back. And I'm like, it kind of looks like bacon a little bit, maybe. I don't know.
The only thing I've eaten that I didn't really like was a goat stomach. It's very tough and leathery.
Yeah, I don't know if I could do that. And I don't know that I would do the scrapple or anything else like that again. I think, since they're not around to make an impression on me anymore, I think that was the impression they were making on me. I was trying to impress them by doing what they did. And I'm glad I did it, it's things like that, but no more. Yeah, I
enjoyed scrapple when I had it.
Again, I might, but I just can't see myself doing it again.
Have you noticed that your kids mimic you?
Elizabeth has her traits that are just like me. Again, for the most part, she was around her mom more. And her mom was fortunate enough to be able to stay with her during, every night whenever she was in ICU and stuff like that, to where I didn't have that luxury, I guess, for lack of a better word. Will, again, he's my stepson, but he's 12 and I've been around him since he was, 6. I see a lot of me, in him, but of course, his family as well. But Addison, the 16-year-old, she stays in her room and on her phone and talking to boys and stuff.
I got you on that one.
All
So
right.
what kind of food you serve at the restaurant?
So we do breakfast and lunch, and a lot of traditional stuff. Grits, eggs, bacon, sausage patties, sausage links, pancakes, waffles. A couple of different flavor waffles. All the kids have something on the menu too. Elizabeth has a chef salad, just with cucumbers and stuff on it. Addison has the Addison waffle, which has peanut butter sauce, Reese's peanut butter sauce, and Hershey's dark chocolate. And then Will has the Willard sandwich that Robert likes.
I really like it.
It's basically chicken tenders tossed in a house-made honey buffalo sauce with lettuce and pepper jack cheese on it.
Nice.
Yeah.
So we do
down for lunch.
Yeah, we do a chicken and waffles sorta also. That's actually the name of it, chicken and waffles sorta. And it's chicken bites dipped in pancake or waffle batter and waffle batter, waffle cut fries with like a cinnamon on them.
Nice.
And,
with a syrup or no syrup?
Yeah, we do a syrup on the side, and then we drizzle some spicy hot honey on the chicken.
All right, now this is the part that's going to either make all the people up where I live excited or not. Do you use like log cabin or do you use real syrup?
I can't tell you on that one. It's
okay.
No, we do use we wanted to do the real maple syrup, but it just got to where we were going to be out of budget on it. And
I know it's pricey.
I'm trying to get people to come in there a goal of 2 times a week, maybe 3 times a week, and if you get out of that, then it's a splurge.
Gotcha.
And
okay.
we still got a few basic items on there, just grits and eggs. So for $5 or $6. So some of the guys that are the older car guys or whatever, that are on some kind of fixed income, they can still afford to come in. Or, we've got Philly cheesesteaks for 11 or 12, and I think steak and eggs for 15 is the highest thing on the menu.
All right. So normally we ask our guests about a book that they recommend, and we spoke earlier, and you said that based on loyalty that you like Little House on the Prairie.
Yeah,
Go ahead and tell us why.
Yeah, I watched Little House on the Prairie frequently. I had the flu a few weeks ago, and I watched just about every episode in 2 days, I think. But whether everyone in really on the show was loyal to their self, loyal to their family, loyal to the town, loyal to God, and it just their core values, which it may be a little bit exaggerated for the show. Of course, it was based on a true story, but it's like, yes, I would be that dedicated of a father or neighbor or whatever the case may be for that particular episode. I just, there's not much bad on there, and it kind of, for everything that you see in the world now today, you watch an episode of that and it's like, well, was it easier then or was it harder? but people just aren't that way anymore. Just like I touched on earlier about the older generations that are, for the most part, not with us anymore. Just people aren't that way as much. And if I can leave a little bit of that for the next generation to at least see or witness a little bit, I feel like I've accomplished a little something there.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Todd, and thank you for.
Sorry, I was going to say, why don't you tell everybody where your restaurant is so that listeners can all come and enjoy your.
So if you're on Facebook or social media, whatever, or Google, 10 Lizzie's, Lizzie's, no apostrophe, 10 Lizzie's Cafe of Sumter. And it's at 105 East Westmark Boulevard, Sumter, SUMTER, South Carolina. And we're open Tuesday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Todd, thank you for sharing with us. I do appreciate everything.
Thank you, Todd.
And now I'm hungry.
Appreciate y'all having me.
Yeah.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for hanging out with us today on Living by Oak Values. If you love what you heard, hit the subscribe button and stick around for more inspiring conversations. Got thoughts or want to dive deeper? Share your story or snag a free session at northmancoaching.com. Oh, and if you've got a story worth sharing, why not be a guest on the show? Drop us a line. We'd love to hear from you. Join us again next week for another inspiring episode. Until then, keep embracing your values and stay authentic.